I'm Adrienne Enns, and I welcome you to the Intention Sessions podcast. I want to inspire our most intentional living. In each episode, we'll talk to remarkable individuals who will share their authentic journeys and their insights with us. They're going to remind us that life's complexities can be our greatest teachers, and that intentional living can be expressed in an infinite number of ways. I hope you find some inspiration for your most intentional life right here. Today on the podcast, we have Chantal McCulligh. Chantal is an award-nominated, published, and top-rated content marketer who has perfected the talent of growing companies through content and social media. I love this part. She was a blogger before blogging was even a thing, and she was one of the top Canadian YouTubers before YouTubing was even a thing. Several years ago, Chantal decided to launch a new project to help other anxiety sufferers out there to know that they too can live a great and fulfilling life. She wants to help those suffering see the light and show them that they can live successfully, happily, and powerfully. So that new project is what we know today as Anxiety Gone. And today, Anxiety Gone is a thriving platform for anxiety warriors to come together for support and guidance and love. So I met Chantal through the Anxiety Gone box. We connect that way, and we got the Seeds of Intention cards out to the subscribers. And I loved when you reached out. I work with a lot of subscription boxes, but this one, the fact that it's Canadian, and also that I used to suffer from horrible anxiety so to help serve that audience means a lot to me. So welcome.
Oh, thank you. I gotta say that bio was so good as well. Like, I'm totally gonna steal that from you.
I will send it over to you.
Yeah, I'm updating my website mentally as we speak.
I love it. So let's start at the beginning. Like, where did the idea for Anxiety Gone come from, and what led you to launch it?
I think my story really begins, when I was originally diagnosed, I was 7 years old with panic disorder, which is crazy because most kids weren't diagnosed at that young age. And it's funny because I'm very intuitive, and I always knew growing up that I wanted to be able to help people with anxiety, because you always have this belief that you can't have the job you want because you have anxiety. You can't have the boyfriend or the girlfriend or whatever it is. You can't have it because you have anxiety, and it's limiting to you. And then, so I started my career as a YouTuber, which turned into blogging and then freelance writing. And I was like, this is my time. I kind of grew out of the fashion and beauty thing as I got later into my 20s. And I was like, I need substance. Like I lost my passion for that. And I was like, I need something that's going to change this world. That's kind of what I've always wanted to do. And I get a lot of my intuitive messages when I sleep, and I woke up one day and was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to start an anxiety box. And sure enough, there was none out there. So, there was the boxes for the mental health or self-care. And I was like, you know what? I'm not going to walk that fine line. Like, I'm going to cross it. This is a box for anxiety warriors, and that's what it is. And here we are.
It's amazing. And I was just, as I was thinking about this, first of all, I love that you're talking about it, that we're talking about it. And to me, when I was really suffering with anxiety, horrible panic attacks, it's kind of was like this vicious circle. I was so anxious that, taking a step to do something intentional or mindful seemed impossible, which led to more anxiety, so it was kind of this horrible loop. But I also felt alone. Like I just didn't know that resources like this existed. So I'm just curious, to hear you talk about, how this can help people and how they can access it.
Yeah, I think, taking that initiative. So, A lot of times we think we have to take this huge step, which seems impossible, especially when you're going through intense anxiety. But something as simple as getting a box from our company and to learn new tools and new techniques and fun toys and things like your seeds of intention, like just these little things can make a huge difference. And it's just a small step, and it doesn't have to be an unbearable step like exposure therapy or facing your anxiety. It's just a small step to enjoy this box of mental health self-care, and in that box, you get all kinds of things that will help you take the next step. So, yeah, I think, I don't know where I'm going with that, but yeah.
No, it's perfect. And what do you feel like helped you the most? Because 7 is really young, to
Yeah.
navigate. So I imagine it's been different at various stages. But what have you found that has helped you? It might even be the most at different periods.
Yeah, honestly, the shift for me was when I was probably out of high school, early 20s, and I was going through a bad breakup at the time. And a lot of it was stemmed by anxiety, and it created anxiety. And I literally packed up my car, moved out of my apartment, and drove to Florida. Didn't know where I was going. And I ended up going back and forth for 5 years, and it changed my life. It was at that point when I realize that I can do whatever I want, because there I didn't know anyone when I first got there. So I had no one to disappoint, and I had no expectations to live up to. And it was at that moment in my life I realized, okay, so this is kind of where my anxiety is coming from. Because if I can feel anxiety free in an area with no one, then it must be stemmed to this fear of disappointment. And then that obviously led me on my journey to kind of going back through childhood trauma. And sure enough, like, yeah, I used to kind of get yelled at and scolded at for having anxiety in places. And so I was always scared of people's opinions about my anxiety, which is funny because now I'm like an open book, but
Usually takes something like that, though, right?
I just kind of, and it's funny because I always say like 20 to 22 were like my dark years, but they were the best years because I just completely transformed into exactly who I am and who I was always supposed to be. And I wasn't clouded by expectations and limited beliefs.
It's amazing. So does your anxiety rear its head now?
100%.
What does it look like now?
um, of course, I have days where I'm just anxious. And then there's times when I have to do something that triggers me, such as eating in a restaurant or eating in front of people or driving in a car with someone. Just to put it into perspective, last year for my birthday, my boyfriend's mom took me to a play, and I was a mess before she picked me up, running around the house. I am calm. I am courageous. I am safe. And my boyfriend's like, oh my God, like he's never seen me like that. And I'm like trying to do meditation and pull cards. And then this year, I was like, I'm good. I got my cards. I got my crystals. So it really just depends, but it's still the same in terms of the physical symptoms, the hot flashes, the I'm going to be sick, and the I need to get out. That's all the same. What's different is now I have the tools to manage it. And I think age is a huge thing, because as soon as I kind of had control of my own life, I realized I can leave when I want to leave. I can excuse myself to the bathroom if I'm having a panic attack if I want. Whereas when I was a child, can I be excused? Can I go sit in the car? You're told where to go and when to. So it's the same, but it just, I have different tools. So it never gets to that extreme point of climax.
I think it's just good for people to hear that, right? Because it's something that we can live with.
Yeah. And I kind of get uneasy when I tell people that it gets better when you get older and you have control of your life, because I never want teenagers or children to feel like it's going to be bad until then. But I also think it's good for parents to hear that. And I kind of take that experience to go back and help parents learn the difference between forcing your child to go somewhere and encouraging them and punishing them and instead of consoling them when they're having a panic attack. So it doesn't have to be bad as you're a child or teenager, but it definitely is something that is largely kind of on the parents to impose that, I guess you could say.
Yeah, and I just found it interesting what you said about the expectations because I found that very true for myself. Like I can see it now in hindsight. I couldn't see it at the time, but when I was having really, really horrible anxiety, I was just so disconnected from myself. So I would
Mhm.
feel anxious and then I would be so afraid of feeling anxious. And like you said, hot flashes, sweating, my legs would shake. I would feel like I was going to pass out. And I remember talking to a therapist once, and she was like, just breathe. Like, and I was like, I don't understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
It didn't make sense to me at the time. And now, slowly over time, like, really she didn't explain breath work to me, she didn't
Yes.
explain grounding techniques. And I was too almost paralyzed to take the information in. But it's just like once you connect to yourself with
Yeah.
whatever works, it makes such a big difference.
Mhm. And I agree with what you're saying, I was always told, "Just face your anxiety. It'll be fine. Just face it." And I'm like, "Dude, I'm about to, like, die, or at least I think I'm going to. I'm not facing it. Are you kidding me?" Like, but now, with all the resources, you don't need to go to a therapist to learn really powerful coping techniques. And with the breathing, I was always told that too. Just don't think about it. Just breathe. Whereas now you're taught the power behind that and the science that supports that if you breathe, you will calm down. And actually, that's something I do, that when I feel my heart palpitations, I slow down my breath and I say to myself, it's scientifically proven that my body will calm down if I do this. And so it's like not just a woo woo thing, it's science.
Totally. And that's what once I didn't even realize the science part at first, but once I was like, okay, this mind, body, spirit, like we're all on the same side. Like my body's
Yeah.
actually on my side, and so we
Hmm.
can work together because when I was having anxiety, I was totally disconnected from my body. So I thought it was working against me, but it was just trying to get my attention because there were some things that were wrong that needed correcting for me.
Oh, 100%. I think it's very rare for someone to have anxiety and it's not passed on from a generational thing or stemmed from something in your childhood. I think if you're having anxiety, it's a great opportunity to learn something new about yourself that you might not be facing or even know that you're dealing with. And then, so it's not a bad thing. You have anxiety, it gives you the opportunity. It's like, hey, don't forget about me. Like you have something to work out.
Yeah, it's like your body just trying to like get your attention because and that's why I was curious to ask you because I still feel it come up and now I'm just not as afraid of it. I'm like, okay, let's allow this, but it's more nervous excitement, but I feel more comfortable meeting it.
Yes, yeah. And it's probably, you probably have tons of coping techniques. And that's what I kind of say, as long as you have your techniques, you can get through it. Right? And that's the power of learning and the power of our boxes, learning new techniques, trying new toys and tools, because the more you have to deal with that anxious moment, the less you fear it. And the less you fear it, the less you have it. And it's a great little, what do they call them? Tumble things, tumble tweeds or whatever. You know what I'm saying?
Yes. Well, and that's what I really also love about the box that you create and your blog, because I find that they're just really practical tips there and like small, accessible things. That's like we can be doing this all the time. So when that really stressful, anxiety inducing moment comes, we're prepared. So
Yes.
I'd love it if you want to share some of I don't know, the techniques, I'm air quoting, that work, or just like that are your favorites, or that have really spoken to people, or if people had to choose like 3 things to start with, where would you direct them?
The first would be, oh my gosh, I have so many things because I always say it's small steps, right? So you do a small step every week, and then by 1,000 weeks, you have such a good foundation. But
Yeah.
you don't need 1,000 small steps, but there are so many. So I think one thing I'll focus on the things that I do religiously every day. I never skip them. So the first is I wake up, my boyfriend and I actually pull cards. So your seeds of intention cards, absolutely obsessed with them. There's like just, I feel like so many cards out there have like a message that you can't relate to. And
Yes.
yours are just like, boom, here, this is your goal for the day. This is your intention for the day. And so every morning we pull a card and we put that in the kitchen. And that's our card for the day. We walk past it, we repeat it. That is our thing. So that just kind of helps give you that reassurance and support that you kind of need, like, hey, yeah, I can do this. Like, okay, so this is what I'm going to do today, or this is what I'm going to focus on. And then I'm big on the yoga and the meditation. And trust me, in no way am I a yogi. Like, I think there's just such a misconception about meditation and yoga. But I can tell you, yoga changed my life.
I
I
agree.
don't know. And everyone's like, what do you mean? And I'm like, I don't know. You have to do it. Like, something in you just switches, right? And
Mhm.
you're less reactive. And it's so weird. And trust me, I hated yoga when I first started. I was like, this is so boring. Like, but I stuck with it, and it was like something changed. So yoga, I think, is so powerful. And then meditation. But for the people who don't like that word, just taking a quiet moment. I actually have like a closet set up. I have a Zen den, and I have a closet set up where I'll just sit in there. So sometimes I'm doing some slow, deep breathing. Sometimes I'm journaling. Sometimes I'm trying to connect with dead people. Like, but
I love it.
it's my space and it's my time. And I think it's so important to take at least 5 minutes to just sit and be. And lastly, I'm really big into crystals and aromatherapy. And that's for some people. Some people it's not, but you can't go wrong with a lavender, right? Like a lavender spray or something. I love it. So good.
So true. It's so true. And I just want to pick up on what you said about yoga, because I also talk about it a lot, but I would describe myself like you. Like, I think Instagram gives us this misconception of what a yoga practice might look like.
Hmm.
And in talking to you, I'm reminded of when I was really, really struggling. I would force myself to go to a yoga class, but I would pick the spot beside the door so I could get out if I
Yes.
was going to have a panic attack. And
Uh-huh.
it's just so interesting to me now because it was very, very real.
Yeah.
And now to me, it's also just the yoga practice. It helps with the breathing, but it's also just like meeting myself. Like, so every morning I'm like, okay, Adrian, like, and some days it's like, oh, I could go a little deeper into a stretch. And other days I'm like the Tin Man, but it's just like, okay, I'm going to meet myself in this moment. So it's like meeting yourself in an anxious moment. Like you just get used to meeting yourself.
Yeah. I mean, it's so hard to explain it. And I do agree that Instagram does have this, oh, you got to put your feet above your head. And, it's none of that stuff. Like, really, yoga, I mean, it's great if you can do that. But, the other day, Monday was just not a day for me. And my sister in law was like, so what are you doing? And I'm like, currently laying on my yoga mat crying. And that
It sort
was,
of works for that too.
yeah, right. I'm like, but that was kind of like my moment, my little yoga practice for that day. I was doing nothing but crying. But yoga is much more than standing on your head and breathing. It's way more deeper, physically and emotionally.
Totally. And the point you made about the meditation, I think also people have this idea that it's, um, this big elaborate practice. And I'm
Mhm.
usually like, okay, you can just start with 1 minute. Like or you can be in a meditative state while you're washing your dishes or going for a walk. So do you have some tips of like where people can, because I'm like, just start somewhere.
I know. You know what? I didn't like meditation at first. I have a very active brain. I'm pretty sure I'm ADD. But excuse me. When I first started, I had to actually put it in my phone and set out that time. And it was like, ugh, I got to go meditate. But I did it for the purpose of knowing it was good for me. And that's kind of the thing too. Healing isn't always a fun journey. It's not always something you want to do, but you do it because it's good for you. No one likes eating broccoli, but you do because you have to. It's kind of the same thing with meditation and other practices like that. Um, Fortunately, I think it is enjoyable for the most part, but now I can say that. But what really changed my mind shift from, ugh, I have to meditate to, ooh, I get to meditate, was realizing the things you can do when you're meditating. I'm like, oh my gosh, like, girl, I am going to talk to my dead grandpa and I'm going to go back to my past life and I'm going to relive my birth. Like, it's crazy the things you can do when you meditate, and that stuff is really interesting to me. So now I'm like, what dead person am I going to talk to today? But I like intuition and I like strengthening that. And I think so finding something that works for you. So for me, I don't like, I don't know. I really like the forest. I connect with nature. So I'm going to probably meditate to forest as opposed to flames, fire, campground, whatever. You have to gear your practice towards you or you're never going to stick with it. And I think when you gear your practice to your preferences, it becomes enjoyable. And then, of course, it becomes a habit. And then, of course, the couple days you skip it and you realize just how much it was helping you. And then it kind of makes you fall in love with it again. I don't know if that makes sense, but it's like you don't know what you have through meditation and breathing until you don't.
I totally agree. And yeah, sometimes I think of it, people often tell me, they're like, oh, I got off whether it's an intention setting practice or meditation or
Mm-hmm.
whatever it is. And I say, at least it's true for me, it's just, I think that awareness is just the biggest piece because if they're all practices, then we realign. But I'm with you. Whenever I miss them or skip them or what have you, I'm like, oh, okay, now I do see like the impact that
Yeah.
had on my body and my mind and my attitude and everything.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Like when I'm having a bad day, like I'm like, I got to go meditate. I might not want to, but I'm like, I need to because I'm being snippy. I'm irritated. I'm miserable and no one else deserves that. I don't deserve that. I'm going to go meditate. And it's just like, you're just checking in with yourself. And I think for beginners who don't necessarily know if they can sit down and just be still, starting in the shower is always a great idea. I think just being, we go through all of these activities throughout the day, just doing it like a robot. And then when you bring mindfulness to something such as a shower, you can do that meditation like anytime. So for me, I'm always like in the shower, I'm not just washing my hair, like I'm washing off all the anxiety. I'm conditioning like my past childhood trauma, and it kind of doing that and meditating or being in a meditative state and showering or doing whatever with intention um, is a great way to start the day, right? You're not dragging your butt to the shower. I'm going to go shower and I'm going to prep myself. And that's really what it is. You're treating yourself to like not your physical self, but you're treating your emotional, spiritual, mental self to a spa day, really. That sounds weird, but you know what I'm saying.
No, I totally, none of it sounds weird. And I totally agree because you think on the flip side, you could be in the shower having an argument in your head with someone, or you could be in that stressful presentation. Like
Yeah.
you're in control of where you are. So I love what you're saying about just like really being where you are and savoring the moment and really making it mindful and like work for you.
Yeah, I heard this amazing saying once that always comes to me when I'm anxious or feeling upset. It's something like if you're living in the past, or sorry, if you're anxious, you're either living in the past or in the future, but you're certainly not present. And it's so
Yes.
true. It's like if I'm not if you're just bring yourself back. What am I doing at this moment? What does the chair feel like on my legs? What do my clothes feel like? Like just be in this moment and don't worry about what's to come or what has happened. Again, easier said than done, but just for this moment, come to yourself and just be here, right?
Completely,
Hmm.
completely. And I'm just curious, like, so for somebody who's listening who maybe is not familiar with oils or crystals, could you tell us a little bit about how you use those?
Yeah, I think, they're not as complicated as a lot of people probably think they are before they indulge in them. Essential oils, honestly, I use them for everything. Um, Lavender is obviously the best essential oil for, just emotional well-being and stress relief, sleep. But I would say to start with the spray. You don't have to get a fancy roller or, an expensive bottle, really. Start with the spray and spritz down your bed before you go to sleep. And it's magical. It's really magical. I like to explain it as you walk through a lavender. I'm going to use lavender just, because that's my example. But you walk through a lavender field, you're going to feel calm. But if you're not around a lavender field, how are you going to get that same feeling? Well, like there's no woo woo ness about essential oils. It takes that lavender and it puts it in a bottle. So you can have that soothing scent wherever you are. Um, but I think a spray is always so nice. It's just like, I don't know. I just
I
love
love
it.
that suggestion. And to me, also, I just hear it like it just, really being kind to yourself, right? Like not just falling into bed at the end of the day, but just this simple action just makes it this beautiful, enriching act of self care.
Right. And I think healing has so much to do with infusing everything within the intention of self-care. Like that might sound like a hard thing to do, but it really isn't. Like going to bed, I'm not just going up to bed. I go up to bed, I spray my essential oils, I take some magnesium, I spray magnesium on my feet, I rub some lotion on, and I meditate, and then I fall asleep. It's like everything I do in my life usually has the intention of being good to myself, right? So
Mhm.
I don't know. I'm trying to think of like a silly idea. I don't know. Something like walking up the stairs. I never just walk up the stairs. I'm always thinking, like, how am I going to flex my muscles to get the good stretch or whatever it is? Like everything I do, I try to do with an intention of being kind to myself. And sometimes that involves, lying on my couch for 12 hours watching Tiger King. But
Yes, it can, like the pendulum swings.
yes, it's one or the other. But um, yeah. And so with crystals, um, they're super easy to pick because at the end of the day, you just kind of pick what you're geared towards. And you have to trust that like you said earlier, your mind and your body and your emotions and spirit, they're all connected. So if you walk into a crystal store and you're geared towards, let's say, amethyst, you have to trust that your body is telling you what you need. And, as you learn more about that kind of connection, you learn to trust your gut. Your gut's always going to tell you what you need at the end of the day. So with crystals, just I would go to a crystal store and pick something that you feel good. And sometimes some people put them under the pillow. I don't because I sleep like a maniac. Um, but I really like those thumb worry stones. So it's literally a stone with an indent for your thumb, and you just press on that. And it comes from the monks back in the day. They would do that with a stone, and once over the years the stone got an indent of their thumb, it was said that their practice was complete.
I
So
love that.
yeah, it's interesting to be able to physically push into it. And a lot of times there's imperfections in the crystals or gemstones. And so you kind of just feel them with your, I don't know what it is. It just, it's one of those things, like, and everything is vibration, everything is energy, and you don't have to be spiritual to understand that it is science. And so using a crystal, aside from the distraction of the thumbstone or holding something in your hand or wearing a necklace, aside from the distraction, you also have the energy side of it.
I love it. And I love everything you've said about like just, these are small things that we can just layer into our everyday. Because a lot of times they're just two things I want to say is I hear people in terms of intentional living tell me that they don't have time. So I love that you're emphasizing what I tell them. It can be layered into every single thing
Mhm.
that you do. And then all of these experiences are so much richer. But the
Yeah.
other thing that people, they sometimes say it directly, sometimes it's indirectly, but they don't feel
Mhm.
worth it. They give all their energy to other people and they're not worth it, or they're going to wait until they're happy or they have that job or that relationship. So, what would you say to those people?
What I would say and what I do say, because I do have some of people like that in my own life as well, I say, if you don't take 15 minutes for your wellness today, you'll pay for it with 15 years of your health later. And I
Yeah,
mean, it's a scary reality, but it's very much a reality. Stress is linked to so many diseases, and if you deserve that 15 minutes, and if you don't think you deserve 15 minutes, then take 5 minutes, and if you don't think you deserve 5 minutes, you start with 1 minute. Paint one toe. I whatever it is. And if you think you don't deserve it, um everyone deserves to feel good and to love themselves and to heal and to just treat themselves to goodness. So, and if you still don't think you deserve it, well, no one deserves 15 years of health problems. So get to it.
absolutely. Absolutely. Are there any other like questions that you get a lot, or like objections or obstacles? Like, what do you hear from people?
I think, like, it's not very often, but the one consistent thing that I do get sometimes is, well, having a plant in my house isn't going to cure my anxiety, and using lavender isn't going to cure my anxiety. And you're right. It's not going to cure your anxiety, but it's going to make you feel good. And that is the first step, right?
Mm,
It's all about these small steps and creating a foundation. And you're not going to blossom on this dirt ground. You need to water it and plant seeds and love it, and for the tree to blossom. And that's kind of what you're doing, is you're prepping yourself, and you're giving yourself tools and support, and calming elements to essentially big picture tackle the big issues. I think the most important tip that I have, is to never stop learning. I think so many times we're
agreed.
like, yeah, like so many times we think, I've read that self help book. I've read that self help book. I have that deck of cards. I don't need that. I journaled. I don't need a journal anymore. But every single time you pick up something new, or learn something, or sorry, or read an article, or you always learn something different, whether it's a new breathing technique or a new way of thinking, a new perspective. So never stop learning. Give absolutely everything a try. If you don't think you're going to like essential oils, try an essential oil. If you still don't like it, then move on. But you tried it. You can't knock anything until you try it, because you deserve to heal and to live your best life. And that's not going to happen if you're, as Albert Einstein said, something along the lines of, insanity is the definition of wanting change without change, right?
I couldn't agree more because I also hear these things a lot. And it's like that statement, it just speaks so much of like a mindset. Like into my mind, I picture like a door slamming, right? Like that's not gonna
Yeah.
work. Door slam. This isn't gonna work. Door slam. And it's just like, well, what if we just like propped the door open like a little bit?
Let's just
You
wedge
can
it.
take one peek in the room and see if you want to go in. But to your point, like if you think it's not going to help, it's definitely not going to help
Yeah.
because you're not even giving it the breathing room.
Right. Oh, for sure. And I think what really changed my perspective is just a little thing I'll add here. I did an energy course, and of course, I always correct my negative thoughts to positive because I should. And you read all these articles, you should do this and you should say affirmations, and I always did, but I didn't really know if it was real. So
Mhm.
I go to this energy course, and they held up these rods. I think they're called dowsing rods, and they literally walk you through these activities, and the rods open when you think positive and they shut down and close when you think negative, strictly by your body's energy and the way you're thinking.
Wow, that's
Insane.
amazing.
Yeah. And then they teach you how to ground, and then they go through the negative scenario again, and you stay open. So that's the power of grounding. It's wild, but that was like I could physically see my thoughts changing a physical object around me, and I was like, okay, this is real.
That is remarkable. And it just reminds me, I was researching something recently, and I'm probably gonna like butcher this. Any neuroscientist would be like, you're dangerous with a little bit of information. But was just, yeah, like also talking about how our brains get rewired, like if we
Yeah,
focus on something that we're grateful for and we focus for 20 seconds, like you're actually rewiring your brain. So you're not falling into these patterns. So, like you said, affirmations, shifting our thinking. But then there's also, yeah, like the rewiring of your brain. And like you've just said, how it all works on an energetic level. Like all of that information to me is just so powerful.
oh, it's wild, the fact that you can rewire your brain. And I think so many times we think this is my life and this is how I've been and this is what I've been through. So this is where I'm stuck. But like your brain is not like this thing that cannot change. It's not like a rock that is never going to change. And everything today, all you do and all you think, those are learned behaviors, learned thoughts. But you can unlearn them and change them for something else. Like it is wild the things you can do with being able to rewire your brain. And okay, so my brain was originally wired to restaurant, panic, gonna throw up, run to the bathroom. That was my pattern. And throughout the years, I've rewired that where I'm like, restaurant, good food, give me a daiquiri. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's wild. And again, learn about it. Like, do some research if you're listening to this, and learn that your brain is changeable, and your patterns and your thoughts they can all change. Flip the dialogue, right?
Yeah, and again, and just this openness, because I know when I was coming out of it, I was just like, to your point, I was like, I just thought, this is my life. This is how it works. This is the way it's supposed to
Hmm.
happen. And I thought, well, what if I don't, what if I want something else to happen, And even
Yeah,
just that openness of like, well, what if I tried this? And then once I was open, things that actually happened were even better than things I ever could have imagined. And that was
yeah.
mind blowing.
100%. You have to be open to it, because the same thing when my life changed was when I was like, no, I'm good. I can get anything I want. I can be whatever I want. I can do whatever I want. And sure enough, like I have everything I thought I could never have when I was a child. Yeah, it's crazy.
It's amazing. So, can you tell folks who are listening, like how they can access all of your amazing resources, how they can get their hands on one of these boxes? Where can they find you?
Yeah, of course. So you can visit anxiety-gone.com, where we have tons of articles with awesome techniques. And then, of course, our boxes are at shop.anxiety-gone.com. And you can subscribe for 30% off. We do have a spiritual box, and then we also have our health and wellness box. And we have a new box every season to keep you guys constantly learning, because that's what I'm all about. And on Instagram, and our Instagram is a good place to be. So that's at Anxiety Gone.
Amazing. And is there anything else, I don't know, that we didn't cover that you wanted to add, or some closing words?
I think lastly, the most important thing is that everyone deserves to live the life they want and to be who they are and who they want to be. And whatever you have gone through in the past or what you will go through in the future, that never defines you. And really, your life is anything you want it to be. And it's just up to you to take that little first step.
So beautifully said. And I'm just going to second, the boxes and also all of the tips and practices that are available on the site. They're so accessible and beautiful and inspiring. So you should definitely check them out. And Chantal, thank you for sharing all of this and for the work that you do. And I just want everybody to come check it out.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor.
Thank you for listening. May some of the wisdom shared here inspire your most intentional living. For more information about this episode, this podcast, intentional living, and my work in the world, please visit mayyouknowjoy.com. You can also find my May You Know Joy and Seeds of Intention cards there, and my book, Intentional Days. You'll also find details for the Intentional Days membership, where you can gain access to a thriving community of intentional souls and lots of regular inspiration. I've got you covered. Until next time, I wish you great joy and many intentional days.